Hi everyone, and welcome to the session on applications to specialty training and F3s. My name is Gemma Sinclair. I am the careers lead for all of the F1s and the F2 doctors in the Northern Foundation School. I am recording this video for anybody who wasn't able to attend this session that I did in person in the Trust, or for anybody who wants to have a little recap of what we went through. So I'm going to cover a little bit of update about what's going on in the region since you last seen me during F1. I'm going to give you a bit of an update on specialty, and we're going to go through the specialty application form. But I'm aware that not all of you will be applying for specialty training, so we are going to look at F3 application forms as well for anyone who's applying for an F3 teaching fellow, clinical fellow, or a trust grade. So just before I get into this session, I just want to remind you all that this is how I'm going to communicate with you for the rest of Foundation. So if you haven't downloaded this app, I suggest that you do for the rest of F2, just so you don't miss anything. So the app is called Found Your Place, not Find Your Place. You can download it from any app store. It's free. You don't need to register or anything. Just download it and make sure that your notifications are switched on. The recording of this app, if you've been sent it through medical education, the recordings of all of the presentations that I've done throughout Foundation are available on the app. From now until sort of probably March time, there's going to be specialty updates going on there. So definitely for the rest of October, November and December, if anything changes, if I find out anything new to do with specialty training or recruitment for this year, I'll be sending a notification straight out on the app to let you know. So quite recently, we've looked at the changes to the PEDS recruitment for this year, and also the changes to core surgical training have not long been sent out on the app. If you are going to take an F3 from January onwards, I'm going to be sending any F3 job vacancies that come through NHS Jobs through the app so that you won't miss anything and you can apply for it directly from the link through the app. So just make sure you've got that, you don't miss anything. I do send careers information the rest of the year. So if you had this during F1, you'll see that I send out conferences and courses and events that you can attend if they're beneficial to you and your career choices. Okay, so I'm going to go through a bit of a specialty update first for you. This way. So this is the timeline for what you would be looking for applying. I'm recording this on the 21st of October, so ACFs have already opened and a lot of people are applying for those as we speak. They will close, so just in case anybody needs any updates, I am going to refer back to the F1 presentation quite a bit. So you may remember it from F1 that we talked about academic clinical fellowships, and they are just specialty training with some research included in it, some dedicated research time for 3 of the years of the training. If you need to go back and have a look, the recordings are on the app, so you can go and refresh if you need to on those. But they opened on the 3rd, they close on Halloween. Round 1, which is all of your specialty application forms, they will open on the 24th of October, so end of this week, and they will close on the 21st of November. So for anybody who is having to apply for something where there is some form of a self-assessment or a portfolio, a recruitment portfolio that you need to pull together, that 21st of November is the deadline date for most of the specialties. Ophthalmology goes to February, and surgery is, I'll go in more detail when we talk about the portfolio, but surgery is just extending that a little bit of some kind of mop-up things that you need to do for points come after that deadline. Then long list and short listing starts. The ACF interviews are anywhere between those 2 dates. Newcastle's and Sunderland's is January. The MSRA, I am going to go into a bit of detail about what's happening with the MSRA and some of the changes and some of the issues that we've had with the MSRA this year. But the dates for the MSRA are going to be split into 2 sittings this year. So normally we used to get everybody to sit it in January. There's too many people applying for specialty training, so we don't have capacity to do it all in January. So there's going to be some of the specialties will sit it in January as usual. And then some of the specialties, which hasn't been announced yet, but I'm imagining that it is just GP and psych, will sit it in the February because they don't have an interview. Therefore, they can sit that and get a job offer straight off the back of that. The assessment centres are what basically specialty calls their interviews, and they will take place from January through to March. And by the 25th of March, you will know what you've got. All job offers will have come through by that date. I am going to do a little, so there's 2 there's 2 sessions that I do with you in F2. One of them is application forms, which is this one, and the other one is interview prep. And on the interview prep, we cover what you can do with job offers and the hold and the upgrading of specialty recruitment offers as well. So you can get that covered in the other video. So this is what you can apply for. There's not much that's changed. I'm just going to shuffle myself along a little bit. There's not much that's changed from previous years. GP and public health has now got a dual accredited training program that ran for the first time last year. You still have the psychiatry pilots. So we have CAMS one, the child and adolescent, and the psychiatry of LD one available as a run through. So again, you would just apply for core psych as usual. You would tick a box to say that you wanted to do a run through if you scored high enough, and if you get that score, you'll get offered that as a run through, and you don't need to go through competitive entry for higher. The surgical run throughs are still not running in England. No update on that for you. In terms of specialty, you will do 1 application form per specialty. It is a national application process, so you aren't applying to each of the regions like you would be for the ACFs, which are regional. You can apply for as many of the specialties as you want to. I think they are going to put a limit on that, but I don't think that's been put in place yet. As your careers advisor, I'd probably say, 1, 2, 3 max really, but there are some people who, for genuine reasons, apply for more than that. They can't say that you've applied for the other one, so you can pretend that everyone's your first choice when you go for the interviews. That's not an issue either. So just a bit of an update then. I told you about the interdeanery transfer changing when you were in F1, and the fact that before they changed the categories, it was very strict as to who could apply for an IDT. And now they've put an extra category in where anybody can apply for one. So when they initially started to do this category with anyone, we've seen a huge increase in the number of people who are applying for an IDT. There was 724 applications for that. They did shift 232 of those, so they did go into other deaneries. But I included the Northern post last year, so you could see that it's still the same case. I haven't got the Northern figures from the last round of IDT, but you can see that the applications have gone up. There's now 910 people who've, in the last round, applied for an IDT. The majority of those are still people who want to go to the south of the country, so London-based and surrounding areas. Not as many for Northern, and again, we do normally tend to be able to move people into Northern IDD places, so it's quite close, the figures. Once I've got the Northern ones out, I'll send them out once we've got an update on that. And a few updates which is going on in the region. So you might see when you're applying for specialty training that some of the specialties, which it hasn't been announced yet which ones, but I'm going to guess it'll be GP and psych because they do tend to be the more flexible, are offering a less than full-time pilot. So the way that this will work is you might see some GP advert for full-time GP training and an advert for part-time GP training. I'm not really too sure why they've done this. I think it's to do with, they were saying that some people might be put off with applying for a full-time training program and then opting to do less than full-time within it in case they were discriminated against. They're not. It's not part of the assessment process at all. It's not looked at until you get a job offer. But I think there was a bit of a worry that people might feel that way. I don't know if there's something else going on in another part of the country. In Northern, anybody who applies for less than full-time gets it. I don't know anybody who's been refused a less than full-time training post. But I don't know if there's an issue somewhere else in the country where they're not getting that. So it was just to say you might see it when you're applying for something. The CREST form, so just to let you know, I don't think there's many people who this is the situation for, but at the moment, if you're an F2 doctor and you choose to leave foundation, and that could be for any reason, any personal reasons, but you end up quitting halfway through F2, your options if you want to return is to either come back to the foundation school that you were at and ask the postgrad dean whether or not you can rejoin training, or you have to apply for an F2 standalone, which is a competitive process for those posts. They are looking at whether or not they're going to change the CREST so that foundation doctors are able to use the CREST form. So for anybody who hasn't started foundation, they can basically work underneath a consultant for 3 months, and the consultant can sign a document to say that they're at the same level clinically as a foundation doctor. And that's what the CREST form is. And so they are looking at changing the criteria for that, so that foundation doctors may be eligible to be able to use the CREST form if they've left foundation. They don't have to restart. They can do a 3-month trust grade under a consultant. It hasn't changed yet. They're in the process of talking about this and seeing whether they're going to do it. So if it does, as soon as that's in the guidance has been made public, I will send that out to anyone. So the MSRA. You may be aware of some of the issues that we've had with the MSRA. So this came from, I was delivering this session in one of the trusts, and one of the doctors pointed out to me that there had been an issue with the MSRA, and it was all over Reddit and Twitter or X as to what was going on with it. So for anyone who isn't aware, I'll talk you through it. Some of the specialties have 2 intakes a year, and those are GP, psychiatry and anaesthetics, who have an August and a February intake. And the people who were applying for the February intake apply in July. So they were filling out application forms and they were getting ready to book the MSRA, which is required for all 3 of those specialties. And then just before the booking opened to book the MSRA test, they got a message come through saying that if they had already taken the test in the past, they were going to use that score and they weren't eligible to sit the MSRA test again, which is, you know, there's a lot of issues with that. First of all, it absolutely is not fair to take a score from a previous year when they had no knowledge that was ever going to be used, because for a lot of people, they may have sat that test as a bit of a mock. They may not have done their full revision and not got potentially the score that they could have got. And now that they are applying for real and they are revising and they want to sit that test, as the real deal, they are not allowed to, and they're having to use a score which is lower than what they could have got if they reset the test. There's also an issue with the fact that those people had been preparing and revising for a test probably for the last couple of months before they were just about to book it, which again is not fair that they're now taking that away from them. So I went back to our regional recruitment team, which is what I sit on, and asked them if anyone was aware of that, and nobody was. It went up to the postgraduate dean in our region in Northern, and she wasn't aware of it either, so she took it to a national meeting to find out what was happening and why this had happened. And it came down to a capacity issue. There basically wasn't enough space in the Pearson VUE test centres for all of the applicants, so they didn't expect as many applicants to be applying for that February intake as what actually did. So going forward, they have spoke to Pearson VUE and they've increased capacity in the test centres themselves, but also they've got now the 2 sittings. So we have some of the specialties sitting in January and some sitting in February. As to the future, it's really difficult for me to advise you as your careers advisor as to what to do with this. I have to kind of go with what I know at the moment, and that is, if you are planning on applying during F2 and you're applying for a specialty where they require you to sit the MSRA, I think you only need to sit that test if you can fully commit to revising for it. So if you think that you've got the time, you're going to I'll give you this information about the MSRA a bit later, but you're going to prep for it, you're going to revise, you're going to sit that test as if it was, I'll be happy with this score that I come out with, then that's fine, sit it. And if they do make you use that score in the future, then at least you're happy with the score that you've got. And if they don't and you have to resit it, then at least you've done this as a bit of a mock and you've had a bit of a shot of it beforehand. Until they can guarantee that they aren't going to force people to use the MSRA score in the future, or that people will definitely be able to resit it. And it might be an option in the future. It might be that next year's round of recruitment, they may say you can opt to use your MSRA score if you feel like you want to. But until we get any clear guidance on that, I don't want anybody to do a half-hearted attempt at this and then be stuck with that score for future rounds of recruitment. And some foundation doctors are saying, the MSRA is based on foundation competencies. This is probably a good time to do it. I'm in the midst of foundation. It wasn't that long ago that you sat an SJT test. So they're gonna revise, they're gonna sit it and see how it goes. And for some, they're saying the rotation that I'm on during F2 is really heavy. I'm feeling burnt out. I don't feel like this would be the best attempt that I could get. I'm going to not apply for anything. I'm going to take an F3, and I'm going to make sure that I've got some flexibility to be able to prepare for it fully during the F3. And that's fine as well. I think you can apply for training. You can book the MSRA test, and if it gets right up to that point where you feel like the test is next week and you haven't prepped for it, you withdraw your application form and then you apply next year and have a better attempt at it. And I'm apologising that is the information that I can give you, but I just don't want anybody to get stuck in a position where they feel like they've been treated unfairly and they haven't been able to have a fair shot at getting specialty training later on. And that leads us through to the skills shortage list. So just to recap for anybody who can't quite remember from F1, the skills shortage list was prior to 2020. If you were applying for specialty training, there was 2 rounds of recruitment. To be eligible in round 1, you were a UK EU F2 doctor, regardless if you were on visas, as long as you were in F2, or any international doctor who did have a visa but they were in a training post. They were all eligible for round 1. The jobs were advertised, jobs were taken, and then whatever was left over went into a round 2, and that was opened up to anyone from anywhere in the world to apply. And prior to 2020, a lot of the specialties were underfilled in round 1. We didn't fill them. So just to give you an idea of Northern, medicine was about a 50-60% fill in round 1. GP, psych, obs and gynae, peds, we were lucky if we were at about 20-30% fill rate from round 1. So for a lot of the specialties, you were applying pretty much as just an allocation process. As long as you passed the interview, you were able to get a post. And the only specialties that shortlisted prior to 2020 was the ACF and cardiothoracic. So for all the other ones, you were guaranteed an interview. So if your portfolio was a little bit weaker or your MSRA score wasn't the best, it didn't really matter because it was the rest of the interview was then scored with that. And if you performed high in the interview, it balanced out and got you a good job offer. And then the government changed the skills shortage list and they put medical practitioner, the role of doctor, on the skills shortage list. And that just meant that there was no longer 2 rounds of recruitment. It was all 1 round open up to anyone from anywhere. So this is the reason that we have huge numbers of applications. I don't know how long that medical practitioner is going to be on the list. We have had a change of government since I last seen you in F1. We're expecting to have their long-term plan by spring of next year. So whether they'll address anything within that to do with recruitment, I don't know until I see those documents. My common sense, an educated guess, would be that something might change for 2026 recruitment, so August 26 intake, because we do have 1,500 new medical places which were made, and those doctors are now in F1. So they will be in F2 next year, which would mean that there was an extra 1,500 people in the pot to apply for training. So educated guess might be next year, but until that changes, it's going to remain very, very competitive. Everybody is now having to shortlist. There are thousands more applications than we've ever seen before. Recruitment is bursting. It is bursting at the seams. It's hard to manage that number of people who are applying for relatively small numbers of training posts when you compare the two. So unfortunately, I'm in a position where right now, if you're applying, it might be that you're not getting your first choice or even your second or your third choice. But in a couple of years' time, if something changes or if next year something changes, suddenly it goes to a process where actually it's quite easy to be able to get into specialty training. It could turn like that. I do think that this is a short-term thing. I don't think that it will remain as something that's on the skill shortage list for a long time, because I can't see how the system would be able to cope with that. But at the minute, the guidance is hard. You're in this, I know this is really awful to say to you because I know you're the year group that hit through COVID as well, but you are in this bit of a no man's land with these decisions are having a direct impact on your career choices. And they could change, but we don't have a time scale to do it. So I think there are a number of different options. You know, if you're applying for something and you're not getting your first choices and you're taking something that isn't a preference for you, so maybe you're taking training in a geography that you don't want to be based in, if during that you take that post because you want to get into training, if during that first couple of years something changes on the skills shortage list, there is nothing stopping you from applying for an interdeanery transfer. There isn't anything stopping you from reapplying for training as a transfer of deanery candidate. You can still do those things. The options are still open to you. You don't have to remain where you've been put. But it might be that if you don't get offered anything and just whatever you get offered maybe is not appropriate and you take an F3 year, that something might change during that F3 year and then make it a bit easier for you. And again, if anyone wants to have conversations about their own individual plans and how that fits in, you can do that with me on one of the one-to-one career sessions as well. So I'll show you some of the figures just so you can see what I'm talking about here in terms of application numbers. This is a chart produced by NHS England, and it is just showing you the number of applications. Actually, I've got the figures now. I was showing you this graph during the sessions that we did in the trusts, but I've got the actual figures now, so I won't spend ages on this. But you can see the increase. Your blue there is the number of people who are applying during 2022's recruitment round. Your orange is 23 and your grey was last year's for August 24's intake. It is number of applications. That's all we're ever going to get. We can't get any regional perspective on what that might look like because people are applying nationally. And there are other anomalies within this data. So, you know, it's applications. People will be applying maybe with no intention of taking the post because they're doing an F3, or you'll have people who are applying for multiple specialties. There's no geographical preference in there either, so we can't see how many other people would have come to Northern after we filled the posts. This is a look at per specialty. Let me just see if I can click on that and make it bigger for you. Just so you can see, I mean, look at the figures. They're huge compared to last year. It's a 48% increase on the number of applications for August 24 compared to August 23. That is the difference in what you're facing in terms of your competition rates now. And I have to be realistic with you. There's no point in trying to sugarcoat this. This is the reason that people are not getting into specialty training or not getting their preferences. Here's the figure. So what I've done here is I've given you the number of applications per year. So if you're looking at the 2019 ones there, they are the ones where we had a round 1 and a round 2. So those figures that you're seeing in the 2019 are UK, EU, F2 and international doctors on a training visa. And then 2020 is when it first went on, but again, there wasn't a lot of awareness because it went on very close to applications. And then you can see the huge increases year on year from there, with the biggest being just the last year. I have put the number of posts, UK posts, I have put the number of posts on there next to the specialty, just so you can see. And I always get asked when I use this slide in the sessions in the trusts as to whether those numbers change much. They do. There is some movement within the training numbers, but basically it's the government sets how many training numbers that we can have, and the only way that it can go up or come down is the number of people who are CCTing at the other end. So if we have some people who are signing off training, then it will open up posts at the beginning. So you might see some that, you know, like likes of ophthalmology and neurosurgery, you might see them move 1, 2, 3 figures each year. Some of the other ones will be into the 10s to 50. I do give you Northern's figures, and it used to be like a traffic light system this before 2020, but now we are pretty much 100% filling most of our specialties. We still haven't filled obs and gynae, we're still short this year, and we just filled peds. GP, I haven't given you the figures, but they are now 100% filling, which, you know, before skill shortages, we haven't filled GP for a decade, but it is 100% filling now. And I've given you the figures from the ACS I think I gave you the categories, but I didn't give you the number of people who were applying in F1. So I just thought this is a little bit, sometimes we can get a little bit more of a regional look at what's going on because these people are applying for Northern. I mean, they definitely have still gone up, the figures. And I think that's more so a lot of, and maybe it's not a massive increase of international doctors applying for an ACF, but maybe more so UK doctors who are doctors within the UK who are hedging their bets, like applying for more an ACF just to try and increase the chance of them getting something. And you know, if it was like 2019 and before, sometimes if you were applying for an ACF and your academic portfolio was a little bit weak, I would have maybe still said, have a look at what it's been put with and put an application form in if you think you can sit through the interview and you can convince them that, you know, you're interested in research and you've got research ideas going forward. Because if you look at job 7 there with the Jerry's and the palliative specialty training, there's only 7 applications there, which if you're comparing the numbers of people who are going for IMT, that's a much better competition ratio. But, you know, if you were logging into Oriel and you were looking, so the ACFs are open now, if you go onto Oriel and you have a look for an ACF and you see Jerry's is with, you know, GP or psych, which doesn't historically tend to attract that many academic candidates, then you might think, I'll put an application form in. But if you're going up against something that historically does, like derm or plastics or something, then you might be like, oh, there's going to be a lot of people in the mix for that. These ones are Newcastle's, and these are the ones without the research theme attached to them. You can pause the video and you can have a little look. And they change categories each year. There's no guarantee that we'll have the same ACFs or the same clinical areas, or that they'll be grouped with the same ones. These are the ones that do. I should have used my slides better. These are the ones that do have a research theme attached to them, which don't tend to attract as many applicants. I know the derm one does at the top with plastics, but the rest of them, the numbers are fairly low. And I think that's mainly because people are put off with the research theme, which is just loosely attached to that. There is flexibility within it. And also, prior to this year, it was really difficult to find these on Oriel. It used to be that if you were just searching Oriel for the specialty area, if there was a research theme attached to it, it wouldn't come up in the job adverts. But this year I've noticed that they have now put that up with an advert, which is redirecting you to the research theme one. Sunderland was expecting to have a lot more ACFs, and I was advised that they've had an issue with supervisors, which is a shame because I thought they were going to have a few more of these available this year for 2025's intake, but when they've just released them, there's not that many more. Okay, so let's do the form. Now, I know this is an application form. You guys are very intelligent people. You don't need me to tell you how to fill out an application form. So all I'm going to do is guide you through it, pulling out some of the more common mistakes that people might make while they're doing it. The first thing is Oriel. So if you're applying on Oriel and you're using your old profile, first of all, they have loads of people who have an issue with accessing their old Oriel account. So they might say, I can't remember the password, and the password is linked to my university email and I haven't got access to that. That doesn't matter. You don't have to use your old profile. You can set up a brand new one. It makes no difference. If you are going to use your old Oriel password though, account, then there might be an issue with something in your profile. Sometimes you might have to go in and change something within your profile. So if you go on Oriel and you search for the vacancies and there's none coming up, but you know, like, it's open day, I should have been able to see the vacancies on here for the specialty training. This will be the problem. So what I thought it would be easier to do is, rather than talk you through where this is on Oriel, I'll just show you a short video and I'll just talk through it while it's going through. So log into Oriel as you usually would with your login details that you use for foundation. And then in your profile, there is a section called security, which is random. Why would it be in there? But it is. So if you go into security, you will have to re-enter your password. Mine is ridiculously long. I've got a fake Oriel profile because I fake apply for specialty training every year just so I can check out the forms and see if anything's changed. In there, you've got amend your staff group. And in that box, if you're not seeing any vacancies, it's probably because you've got foundation in that box. Take it out and put medical, and then save your profile. Once you've done that, all of the job vacancies will then appear. It's just because you've got it set to foundation, so it's only going to pull up foundation or standalone posts for foundation. This is what the job vacancies look like when they're on Oriel. So I'll do ACFs first. So just so you're aware, if it hasn't got a research theme attached to it, it will be advertised under the training programme of the specialty. So you can see the bottom one there has got acute internal medicine. If it does have a research theme attached to it, it will be under the research theme. So if you're taking an F3, because I know most of you watching this video now will already have seen the ones for this year, but if you're taking an F3 year and you're going to apply for an ACF after that, the easiest way to do this is I will send a list that the NIHR publishes on their website through the Found Your Place app. And it just has a list of every single university in all of the ACFs and which one have research themes. It's the easiest way to have a look and see who's got what. The annoying thing about the list is that sometimes it doesn't show you if it's ST1 or ST3 level. So sometimes you think somewhere's got a Derm ACF, and then when you go onto it, you see it's only at ST3, which is a bit annoying. But it's the easiest way to be able to see the research themes and make sure that you're not missing any on Oriel. If you're just going in and you're searching on the filters on Oriel, and I'm a little bit worried you might miss something, it might be better to go, if you want to do it that way, it might be better to go on there and then go region, northeast, and then search through all of those ones that come through. But you will have to go through a fair amount of vacancies to find which ones you're interested in. And then this is what the normal specialty ones look like. So again, it's the 21st of October. I've had loads of people saying I can't see them. They're not on yet. Don't worry about it. The ACFs go on first and then specialty training comes out. They're going on the 24th of October this year. So when you search, a couple of things just to make you aware of. The areas of the UK have split and they take control of the recruitment just so that it's not one region doing it all. So this vacancy that you can see at the bottom there, it's got LAKSS and then your emergency medicine training post. It's just to make you aware, LAKSS stands for London, Kent, Surrey and Sussex. It doesn't mean that that is for emergency medicine training in London, Kent, Surrey and Sussex. It just means that that region is in control and is handling the recruitment of the emergency medicine training programme. As long as it says recruiting for, and it has England, Scotland, Wales, or it has United Kingdom, that is the right form. Don't worry about that deanery, the little abbreviation of the deanery, which is in the job title. It doesn't mean anything for you. The other thing with this as well, just double check. If it's recruiting for England, Scotland and Wales, that means that Northern Ireland is recruiting on its own. You can see that histopathology post there. You can see that it says Northern Ireland. It's got NI at the top of it. Please don't think that that's an application form for the English ones, because I do have the odd person who comes back to me and is wondering why they're going to Northern Ireland for an interview. And that is the reason why they filled out the wrong form, and there's nothing I can do once you've submitted that and it's past closing. I'm so sorry if the video is jumping slightly. I do have a cold, so I keep pausing the video just to sort my nose out so that you're not having to hear that. Okay, the application form. There's nothing in the first bit that I need to tell you about. It's all of your personal details, eligibility, and then there's a quality and diversity section, which you fill out. The employment. Now, you do need to put down the last 3 years of your employment. So the last two are going to be foundation. But then you can't just have a massive big gap after that. So if you came from undergrad into foundation, you do need to put down the final year of your undergrad degree in there. They do have to have all of it accounted for. If you didn't and you came from somewhere else, then you just need to let them know what you were doing. And if there's any gaps, you need to put like career break or something in there to explain why you didn't have any employment during that time. It isn't being assessed or anything. It's a HR, the letter checking it for the reasons of DBS checks and stuff like that. But it does need to cover 3 years fully so they can see without any gaps. Your employer address can be, well, officially it's the let, but you don't worry about it if you put the trust down, it's absolutely fine. It looks as if I'm teaching you something which is really obvious here when I'm telling you what to put down for your post title. Trust me, you'll appreciate it when you see the drop-down menu that's on Oriel. There are loads of things in there that potentially you might think that you fall under. I'm just putting it straight on there so it's faster for you to find that those things are on there, and that's what you are. You split your employment into F1 and F2. Don't put down all of the dates for your rotations. Just do it as a full F1 and a full F2. And then less than full time or out of sync. So technically, as your careers advisor, I have to tell you that if you are applying for specialty training and you don't finish before specialty starts, you're not eligible to apply and you should get longlisted out. But unofficially, I will let you know that there have been doctors who've applied in the past who have been out of sync and they are finishing a bit later. And they have applied. Some of them have been longlisted out, which is fine. There's nothing we can do. It is what it is. But some of them have actually got through longlisting. Not sure how, but they have. And they've then gone to the interview. And then when it goes through to the region from the job offer that they've got, they've come back and said, oh, I can see that you can't start until November. And they've been offered a delayed start date. So officially, I say you're not eligible. Unofficially, you could put an application form in and see what happens and see whether there's any flexibility with it. It shouldn't be happening, but it is. So I'm just going to tell you my experience of it. Then there's a section called training history, and it has, do you want to transfer your competencies? And it asks for your training number. That is not for foundation. It's for anybody who's already in specialty training, who is either applying for a transfer of deanery type, wanting to transfer deanery, or who are applying for a different training program. In this section, we have some things that it's worth noting. So first of all, there is less than full time. If you know that you want to start your training less than full time from the first day, you can tick that box. There is a blank space in the form which asks for a well-rounded reason, and you can put something in there. You can just put anything you want: research, interest outside of medicine, work-life balance, well-being, whatever you want, as long as you put something in that box. There is a special circumstances section in this part of the application form, which is basically like there is a policy in place for anybody who says that they have to absolutely be based in a certain deanery. There are categories and it's very, very strict what they ask you for. It's normally care responsibilities, or like a disability or a health condition, which means you have to be based somewhere for a certain healthcare. So I'm going to send out the slides. If you're accessing this on the app, there'll be a link to the slides on there as well, and the policy for that special circumstances will be on there, so you can click straight through and have a look at it and see whether or not it's relevant to yourself. There is a tick box on the form for transferring your MSRA score. Now, this was only ever available as an option for GP. So GP had said, if you apply for GP training, you sit the MSRA, you don't take the post, you apply in a future round of recruitment, you can tick a box to say that you would like to transfer that MSRA score so you don't have to sit it again. I don't know if this is going to be an option that might be available to some other specialties in the future. I know anaesthetics has done it this year. It would be good, I think, if it was an option for people who wanted to do it. I don't think it should be mandatory that you have to use old MSRA scores, but it might be an option for more of the specialties if we have this capacity issue and something hasn't changed with the skills shortage list in the future. And then for ACF candidates, this bit is important. So as an ACF candidate, you have to apply for the academic and you have to apply for specialty training. So you have to do 2 application forms, more if you're applying for an ACF in other areas as well. In the specialty application form, there is a tick box which says, are you an ACF candidate? And if you say yes, they will say, do you want to go through this as an ACF only or as an ACF and a specialty trainee candidate? Now, if you go through that as only an ACF candidate, what will happen is when you go to the interview for specialty training, you will not be given any scores for your performance in the interview. All the assessors will do is tick a box to say that you've passed the benchmarks, and you'll come out of that specialty interview with either your ACF if you've been offered it, or unsuccessful if you didn't get the ACF. If you go through as an ACF and a specialty trainee candidate, then you come out with an ACF offer, but also you come out with a full ranked specialty offer with all of the feedback that you can get from that interview. Me personally, I think you should always take ACF and specialty training, because even if you don't get the ACF, I would kind of want to know how I'd done in the interview for specialty and what ranked job that I'd got offered, and any feedback which might help in future interviews. So I think take both, but make sure you don't just take ACF only and then you never get a specialty training offer. You do need to have 3 references. I'm missing S off there. One of them needs to be your current CS or ES. If you're going to go into F3, then it just needs to be whoever's supervising you. You can go back to undergraduate, so it's 2 years from the application deadline, which means you can go back to undergrad for an academic reference or for a reference if you want to use that. The references are not used as part of the assessment. They are done once you've got a job offer, and your job offer will be conditional that your references don't come back with anything dodgy. The references are HR ones, so it'll be things like, has this person progressed well? Has there been any issues with sickness, with lateness, with disciplinary, things like that, HR type ones. It's not a clinical reference. There's nothing in fitness to practice if it's just yes, no tick boxes, and if you tick yes, you don't put anything in the form, you send it off separately to the LET. And your competencies, you would attach a certificate of your medical degree. I've got such an itchy nose, I'm so sorry, that's why I keep pausing the video. You attach a copy of your medical degree, and if you're doing an F3, you'll attach a copy of your foundation certificate. Nothing else goes with the form. Surgery do have this index page where they're asking you to not self-assess yourself, as to speak, but put your achievements within a certain category. And I think they're going to ask you to do that with the application form. Let me see if I can click on this for you. So I've just given you some information about how they shortlist and what counts towards the shortlisting and percentages of stuff, so you can see what they're using. There hasn't been any change in this. Surgery is still using the MSRE, and then the portfolio is part of the actual interview station. So there's no changes to this. Where's PEDS? PEDS has got a self-assessment now as part of the application form, but it does still have blank spaces that you can write in, so technically it is still a shortlist application form. And I just give you a screenshot of the ACF application form just so you could see the kinds of questions that they're asking you, but to be honest, they're live now. You could go and have a look at the application form on Oriel if you wanted to. You might get some of the applications where they are self-assessments. So this is what they look like. It could be a drop-down menu or it could be a tick box. If you do have to apply for something where there is a self-assessment, this is how it works. You don't put anything in the application form. You submit your application, and then you will get an email come through Oriel to your whichever email is linked to your Oriel account, and it will ask you to go onto a portal and submit your evidence. Now, the portals have different times of the year. Some of them have them where they open right after applications deadline, which is end of November, and they're open for like 3 weeks into December. A lot of the specialties use that portal. Then you will have some where actually they want you to sit the MSRA first, and then their portal will open in February. So radiology, surgery, and ophthalmology have a February. There might be others that I haven't thought of off the top of my head, but they have a February portal where you would submit the evidence. So if you are having to put evidence in, you need to check what that specialty is asking for. Some of them are really specific with what they want. If they're not, I've given you a bit of a guide here as to what to use to put in as evidence. Pitfalls, please make sure that if you're putting something in with a consultant signing something off, that they have that their GMC number is on there as well. We have had people have points taken off them because the evidence didn't have the GMC number on. If you're putting in points for a presentation, make sure that you have the slides that you used during the presentation, and make sure that you have proof of presentation. That could be a certificate, it could be an email. If you're getting any emails, please make sure that whoever is providing you with this evidence, it's on headed paper. They do prefer to have their evidence on there. Sometimes you'll get some specialties which will accept an email signature which has all of their details, but most of the time it needs to be on headed paper. Is there anything else that I think I need to tell you on there? Teaching, just make sure that it's very clear, the timetable and which ones you taught on, and make sure you're covering whatever the period of time is. So if it's over a 3-month period, you need to make sure that that is covering a full 3 months, and make sure that you've got feedback as well. I did just listen to the surgical webinar, which was saying that they prefer, this might just be a case of surgery because they've brought back a portfolio station, but they were saying that they were happy to accept if a consultant had put something on a headed paper saying that they had seen the feedback and that it was good, that that was enough for them, and they didn't need to include the individual, like a summary of the individual's feedback. Audits, again, make sure what the specialty's asking for. Do they want 1 cycle, 2 cycles? Do they want the presentation to be of the original audit, of the re-audit? Where do they want you to be presenting it? Is that local? Are they bothered about you presenting it? Because some of them quips you wouldn't necessarily present. So just make sure that you're checking. They want a copy of the audit. Make sure you can see what your role was on it. It needs to be signed off by whoever was supervising it. Leadership's a bit hard. Leadership is starting to come out of the self-assessments, and it's going back into the interview, which is what it was pre-COVID. So just if it is included in the self-assessment, just look at what they're asking for. Normally, you need to have something which shows that you've done a role. That could be a formal job, that could be part of a med society, that could be sports, hobbies, it could be like mentoring people. That's still classed as a leadership type role. So it's something that shows what you've done, the times that you've done it, and then the positive impact that you've made. So that could be like an evaluation from an event, or a mentee's supporting statement saying how much you've helped them. It could be a consultant writing something about the difference that it's made. It can just be a reflection, but stronger if it's somebody else's, if it's coming from someone else. Okay, and then the end of the form is preferencing. So this is where you would put down geographically where you want to work. It won't be open when you apply. Preferencing opens later in the recruitment stage, and you'll get an email come through Oriel that says preferencing's now open on the application form. You'll go in and then you'll rank what you're interested in. If it's some specialties like radiology, surgery, it's all of the jobs, and then you rank all of them and put not wanted for what you don't want. If it's some of the ones that are a bit more popular, not popular, more numbers, then it'll ask you to do top 4 deaneries. So you would rank the top 4 deaneries, let's say medicine, Northern Yorkshire and Humber Northwest, and then within, you would then rank the northern posts within there. The only one that makes your preference quite early on is anaesthetics, because you can only apply for England and Wales or Scotland. You can't apply for both clusters. And that is the form. So I am going to be around. I always make sure that my diary has a bit of space in it around the time when applications opens, just in case anyone's got any problems or they're having issues going through the application form. So, I am around. If you have any problems, just email me. But it is what it is. It's a form, isn't it? And it might be helpful to go back through this when you're applying, in case, just to make sure that you've ticked all those boxes. Okay, let's do F3 applications then. So for those of you who are not going into specialty training or are applying as a backup, we're going to go through how you complete the F3 application forms. Now, we are seeing an increase in people who are applying for teaching fellows. I think I talked about this with most of you during the F1 presentations, but because medical practitioners on the skills shortage list, that isn't just training, that's all jobs of a doctor that anyone can apply for without any restrictions. So we are seeing a huge increase in people who are applying for teaching fellows. And if it was pre-shortage list and I had somebody who was wanting to do a teaching fellow in one of the trusts, and they'd kind of got like half an okay application form that I was seeing, I would be like, it doesn't really matter that much, because they probably will get a teaching fellow post. And then more and more people started to take an F3, and teaching fellows got more popular. And then I was saying to people, okay, now you really need to focus on your application form. You need to make sure that you spend loads of time on it. Don't just whack an application form in and hope to get shortlisted. Like, you need to put some effort into that application. So I was telling them to take their time, send it to me, I'll have a look at it, and then you can get it in before the closing date. And then last year we had the issue where there was so many people applying for teaching fellows that NHS Jobs was closing the applications well before the closing date. So we even had some situations where teaching fellows were filling up so fast that they were closing within 24 hours. So what I've advised everybody to do is, after I've sent this session out, I'm going to, I think I've got one more session tomorrow on application forms. That's the 22nd of October. So after that date, on the app, I'm going to put a section, there's already a section on teaching fellows on the app with just information about it, but I'm going to put some documents in there. So I'm basically going to look at all of the trusts. I think it's this fairy jumper. I'm going to put all of the trusts in there, and then I'm going to put the applications, the job adverts for the teaching fellows from last year's recruitment, which means that you can go in, you can prep your application form with all of the information that I'm about to tell you. And then when the job advert comes out, you can literally just go in, tweak whatever needs to be tweaked. If there's anything extra in the person's spec, copy and paste it into your NHS application form and send it off. And then, if something comes out when you're in the middle of night shift, you're not having to sit and go through an application form. You're not having to rush through something. You'll have it already done, ready, know it hits the mark, and then you can put that in. And I'm sorry that we've had to do it that way, but it's just the easy. It's probably a bit easier anyway, because you don't want to have to not know when you're going to sit down and spend some time doing this application form. So in a way, it's easier to prep it beforehand. So the teaching fellows, I won't tell you what they are. I did that last year in F1. They're all on NHS Jobs. So specialty training's Oriel. Teaching fellows are NHS Jobs. I am giving you a little bit more information on that I did last year on what the teaching fellows look like. So we've got Durham and Darlington's clinical area of choice still. Gateshead's is a bit all over the place. I've just put a list of the teaching fellows that have come out in previous years, but there's no guarantee that those come out every single year. Newcastle's is pretty static. It's mainly those ones. Some of the medicine ones change around a little bit. And then you've got Cumbria, which is area of choice, and North Tees stays the same. Northumbria's is all over the place. It just depends on what they put out, but those have been ones in previous years. South Tees is very static. It does tend to be those same ones each year. And Sunderland South Tynesid's all the same until the two bottom ones where sometimes they change. You've got Psych. If you are applying for a psychiatry teaching fellow in Middlesbrough for Tees and Wear Valley, it is advertised as a clinical fellow, not a teaching fellow, because you can do teaching or research. So if you see me put that through the Found Your Place app, you need to keep an eye out for clinical fellows. So this is NHS Jobs. The website before this is the new one. The one before this was not the best, and this one is 10 times worse. It's not fit for purpose. It doesn't work. I've complained many times. Nobody gets back to me. The easiest way to just, so what it should have, you should be able to search teaching fellow in this region and then save that search. And if a new one comes out, they're meant to email you. But it doesn't work. I've had no emails off them, which is the reason why I am searching NHS Jobs every single day for F3 roles for Northern, for anybody who's, and for Cumbria, sorry. So unfortunately, if you haven't got the Found Your Place app, if you've got the Found Your Place app for Northern, you're going to see them because I'm doing it. And I only ever used to search once a week, but now because closing dates don't really exist, it's closing before the closing date, I am sending them out every day. So if you had the app in F1, that's probably why you were like, why do you keep sending all of these jobs out every day? That's the reason why. If you're not going to Northern, there is no version of me at any of the other foundation schools or the Found Your Place app. There's not career support in other regions. So I'm afraid you are going to have to search this website yourself. If you are, you're going to have to do it quite often. The word that I would use would be just fellow. Don't use teaching like I've got in there, because sometimes they call them junior fellows, clinical fellows, junior clinical fellows, all sorts of different stuff. You're going to have to go with region. If you put Manchester in there, sometimes it won't pull through. You're going to have to put Northwest and then search through for the trusts that you're interested in. There is no filter once you've done that search to look at ST1 or ST3 level, so you're going to have to look at the salary bands. If you're looking at, I think I've got some screenshots of them. Anywhere between 33 and 43 is normally your level. If it's anything that's 50k plus, then it's ST3 level up. It's normally 53 up. This is what the jobs look like on NHS Jobs, and the reason that I've screenshot this, I didn't screenshot it this year, but it was the same scenario. I just didn't get round to screenshotting it. So these are from 2023's entry. But if you look at the closing dates, which again I think I showed you in F1, but just to reiterate, what we're seeing is teaching fellows continuously coming out from January onwards. So the first round of recruitment will normally happen from January. Some will go December, but most of them it's January time. And what's happening is a lot of people are applying for teaching fellows as a backup because they're going to go for specialty training. Or it might be that later down the line something else comes up. Australia, New Zealand visas come through and they end up going back and dropping the teaching fellow. So we are seeing them being advertised right the way through. So if you aren't successful in getting a teaching fellow, don't rule it out. Don't delete the app and think, right, I'll just get a trust grade and I'm off. It might come back up. Because look at the closing dates on those, they're all July. And we had that surgery, that Newcastle surgical specialty came up again really late in the day. There was an ENT one at James Cook that came on the 3rd of August this year. Like, someone didn't turn up for that job, which is a bit worrying, isn't it? Because that's a really good and competitive teaching fellow. But so yes, so they will keep your eye open. They may still be coming out, especially even if you're starting a trust grade in the August. Still keep an eye out. I won't be sending out the job adverts. Then you'll have to search off yourself because we've moved into the next cycle. But it might be worth just seeing if there's any mop up of any ones that they didn't fill. So this is the application form for NHS Jobs. Now, this is very different to what you've been doing for specialty training. This is how all NHS jobs shortlist. This is how the universities shortlist, the government, education, any big organisation shortlists in this way. So for the F3s, this is really important. The application form has your contact details, your employment history, and your qualifications. And then it has this section. So here we have 1,500 words. And we have read how you've demonstrate you've read the published person specification and how you meet the essential and desirable criteria for this post if it hasn't been fully covered in previous sections. Now, this is really important. First of all, I'm going to take you through a job advert so you can see this. So we're going to look at, this is the Northumbria teaching fellow from last year, which is 100% teaching with Sunderland Uni. Now, this is the job advert on NHS Jobs. Before you click that big green button with apply at the top, you must find the person specification. The whole thing is based on that. The person spec will be in the supporting documents. That PDF document there has 20 pages. The first 19 talk about Northumbria's Trust, the exec board, the area of Northumbria, the med-ed department, the teaching fellow description, and then on the last page, we have the person specification. This is what it looks like. So you've got your list of essential and you've got your list of desirable. Now for that 1,500 words, we are mainly looking at the skills and abilities and the personal attributes because the qualifications and the experience you've already talked about elsewhere in the application form. So what happens is your 1,500 words goes off to whoever's shortlisting. Now that might be a consultant, it might be somebody from medical education, it might be somebody who's just been trained to shortlist who has nothing to do with the job role. It's anonymised, so they can't see your name, they can see where you've worked, they can see your employment history, so they will know you're an F2 doctor from this trust, but they won't know which one you are. And then what they do is they have a list of things that they can give points for from this person's specification. So for example, under the skills and abilities, the first one is experience of teaching. So what they will do is they'll scan your 1,500 words. Where have they talked about teaching? They're scanning them because there's hundreds of applications that they're doing. So they're not reading the whole thing in loads of detail. They're scanning through. They will look for where the teaching is. If there's nothing in there about teaching, you're getting 0 out of 4. If there's something in there about what teaching you've done, a description of it, some feedback from it, you're talking about that example, you'll get 4 out of 4. Then they'll move straight on to the next thing, which might be the next one down, communication skills. And again, scan, where's communication skills? If you're putting anything else in that 1500 words, you are wasting your word count. It must be related to something that's on this person's spec. So let's just look at an example. Let's look at teamwork. So if I show you an example of a doctor's application form where I've pulled out where they've talked about teamwork, have a little look at this. Pause the video now. Forgetting it's a video, I was just going to sit there. Pause the video now and have a little read through that. And then think about what score would you give them out of 4. And I'll give you the guidance. I'm sorry, that's small print. I'll give you the guidance that the shortlisters get. So have a little look at that and see what you would give them. When we're in the group session in the trust, I've paused and again, you can pause the video. We talk about this in the room. But think about whether you're giving it a 3 or a 4, you're giving it a 2, a 1. I'm giving it a 0. And the reason that I'm giving it a 0 is because it isn't telling me anything about that individual person's teamwork skills. And that is what I am assessing. I need to see that that person has done teamwork. They understand how to work within a team, and they've shown me an example of a time when they've done that. And that doesn't. It's too generic. And a lot of the time, the application forms that I see, they look lovely, they're well written, but they're too high level, they're too generic. They just talk about things above and beyond, rather than giving me the real nitty gritty day to day, this is an example of when I did this. If we look at teamwork, these are the kinds of things that we're looking for. So have you got an example of a time when you've worked in a team where you've included times when you've been able to participate with people? How did you encourage people to participate? How did you get involved? How did you communicate with each other? How did you use each other's skills and strengths to make the team the strongest it could be? How did you listen to other people? How did you encourage other people to come in and give their views? What did you achieve together? What was the outcome of you working as a team together? Have a little look at this one. Pause the video now, have a read through that, and tell me what you would score that one. So a lot of people here still get a little bit confused with this, and they'll go high with the 2, 3 or 4 points. This one might get 1 point, depends on the assessor, probably get 0. Again, it's lovely, but it's all high level. There's nothing in there about that individual person's teamwork skills. And if I was assessing this, I would first of all be like, okay, being a good team player, great. Right at the beginning of this paragraph, you're telling me that you're going to give me an example of a teamwork skills, which is what I need. I've got 4 points for you. And then I would go through that and be like, right, where's the example? And yes, we know that it's a good part of being part of a team. Yes, we know. Right, second line, one team I often find myself in is part of the crash team. Fab. Right. Who's in your crash team? What's happening? What did you have to do together? How did you work together? What was the result of that? Nothing. It's gone back to an important skill in this team is this. It's gone high level again. The rest of it is waffle. This is why teamwork's important. This is what we do. This is someone might do this, someone might do that. Was it you? Did you do that? I don't know. You're not telling me. And then we get 4 sentences from the bottom. For example, so this can be transferred to a surgical team. For example, on call as a junior. Fab. What were you doing when you were on call as a junior? Who was in that team? What was the situation? What did you have to achieve? Again, it goes back up. If the question was, how does teamwork benefit within a medical setting or within a healthcare setting? Great, 4 out of 4, but it's not. This is, tell me about your teamwork skills. Give me an example of a time when you have worked in a team. And that's not in that answer. So I think you need to be really careful with this. Go through the person's specs and do this. It'll help you a little bit to make sure that you're not going too broad. So what was the situation? I was asked to be part of a team. What was the task? We had to evacuate the area. What was the action? Well, this person did this person did this. We communicated together to do this. We problem solved with this. What was the result? Yeah, and just more succinct. You might have situations where there's not much on the person's spec. So I have seen people where they've done like paragraphs with teamwork and they've done the example of teamwork and then communication. You can do it like that if you want. It's easy for the assessor to read it that way. It might be though that you've got too many skills on the person's spec to be able to do it in that format, and you might need to pull some skills together. So this is just an example of somebody who's pulled in 3 things off the person spec into a paragraph. So we've got evidence of teaching, teaching techniques, and sim. This was backed up with another example going into more detail about one of the teaching sessions, but it's quite a good example to show you how it's pulled in. I'm going to be around, so if you prep with the examples that I'm going to put on the Found Your Place app, then you could have all of these already done, all of your examples already written. I can check them over, and then they're there on a Word document ready for when the teaching fellow adverts or the clinical fellows, and trust me, it's the same thing. So for when they come out, and then you just look, is there anything on that person's spec that I haven't covered in my examples? Is there anything different? If there is, pop another example in there. If there isn't, copy and paste it over, submit your application form. Some of them will take you through to track. So sometimes it'll be done on NHS jobs, and sometimes it'll be done on the system track that some of the trusts use. If it is on track, to me, it's a little bit easier. It helps a bit more to break it down. So I'll show you a screenshot of what the track one looks like. So here's a Obs and Gynae teaching fellow. Is it a clinical fellow or a teaching fellow? I think it's a teaching fellow. This is what it looks like on track. So it's broken it down into the essential criteria for 5,000 characters and your essential criteria and your desirable criteria. But just sometimes people fall into the trap on track of crossing over the sections. So if you see this one, you've got evidence of clinical experience in teamwork, teaching, and organisation and time management. Give evidence of how you've gained each of these criteria and a situation where you've used them, real life situation. But what people sometimes do is they go, all right, I'll write about my teaching experience in here. And they talk all about a sim session that they've run. And then in the next box, it says sim teaching. And they go, oh, as you can see from the previous box, I've done a lot of sim teaching. I'm like, no, you can't do that. The 4 points for sim teaching are in that desirable box there. You can't then refer them back to somewhere else because they can't give you points for that section. So you're either going to have to repeat the information, or you're going to have to come up with a different teaching experience in the first one and then put all of your sim in the second one. And then I did just talk about a little bit in the sessions about how to find jobs. So for NHS jobs, you will get all of the teaching fellows will go on there, and some of the clinical fellows and some of the trust grades will go on there. But there are always jobs within the NHS where you can get them informally. So if, I don't know why I clicked on that, I'll just stay here. If a consultant has a gap in their rota, they can put it on NHS jobs, they can advertise it. But what they're going to get is hundreds of applications. They then have to spend time shortlisting those. They will have people who are applying for loads and loads of jobs just to get in. So some of them probably won't be eligible. Some of them won't be appropriate. Some of them won't have shortlisted well at all. And then they might get that down to 5 people for interview. And then on the day, they'll have 2 people turn up because the other ones have got a job somewhere else, or they weren't actually interested in it. And it's sometimes frustrating for them. So what they can do is, if they do have a gap and they've tried to recruit before and they haven't been able to, they can bypass NHS jobs. And this is where they can informally offer positions. So you will have heard from previous F2s where they've been given a trust grade or a clinical fellow just by contacting somebody in the trust and organising that. So you still do need to do this legwork. So I think from January time, I would probably be making contact with what departments that you're interested in. It would normally be the clinical lead that you would need to contact. Most of the time you can find this information online. You just Google clinical lead, department, South Tyneside Trust. Or sometimes you might have to go through your intranets or your switchboards to find out who that is. And then contact them, ask them if they've got any F3 opportunities. Some of them may come back and say, yes, we do have trust grades. We have them every year. We advertise them on NHS jobs in around May time. That's fine. At least you know it's going to be coming. Some of them might say, yes, we do have some opportunities. Come and have a chat, which is your informal interview. And then they can offer you the job off the back of that. So I would probably start doing a little bit of legwork and contacting places. Research fellows are available, so they are normally 100%. So your clinical fellow is clinical practice with research, and your research fellow is normally 100% research. Now, some of the trusts have these. Newcastle and Northumbria have some, but the universities do also have research jobs. Now, they're not called research fellows in the academic world. If you have a degree or a master's, you're at assistant level, and if you have a PhD, you're at associate level. So you would be classed, I know it's ridiculous, but you're classed as a research assistant. But they have jobs come up all through the year, which are 100% research, and they are in different clinical areas. Now, I don't put them on the Found Your Place app because the research is quite niche. So if you do want to go and have a look at those, you'll need to go onto the university's job pages, search research assistant, and it will come up, and then you'll be able to see. And some of them are 6 months, some of them are 3 years, depending on how much they've got the funding for. They're normally 9 to 5. You'll be involved in clinical trials, research, right from the beginning, or you might be stepping onto a project that's midway through. So you can search for those as well if you're interested in them. I will send out the teaching fellows that the universities have on offer, but I just don't do the research ones. And then I did just show you some of the jobs. I think I might have updated a couple of these from last year, but it was just to say, you know, it doesn't have to just be teaching fellow. If you know you want to do med ed, that's great. You obviously, the teaching fellows are going to give you the postgraduate certificate funded, but there are loads of really good F3 opportunities. So make sure that you're having a good search around if it's in a different region, or if it's in Northern, you're keeping an eye on what's coming through the Found Your Place app, or you're asking about opportunities, because you can really make your F3 and F4 years into something that's going to be really beneficial for your career choice and also beneficial for building up a portfolio. There's loads of pre-hospital medicine coming through lately, and there's also a lot of sports and exercise medicine I'm seeing popping up as well. So just keep your eye open for things. I have given you a list which is contacts in the trust for F3 opportunities. Now, South Tees and Northumbria are very good at this. They have somebody who goes and looks at all of the gaps in the rotas and then offers trust grades to foundation doctors. The rest of them, I think, are just the rota coordinator deals who can tell you where gaps are and give you clinical lead deals. And some of them are just saying there's nobody in place who would do this. You would have to go and contact places. Okay, so career support. Obviously, the app is going to have, there's a lot of information going through the app, so make sure you've got that on. You can ask any questions to me, just email over to us. We do still have the one-to-ones on offer, so if anyone hasn't already taken me up on one of those, they are half an hour over the phone or on Teams. They are just a chat. It's very informal. You can ask whatever questions you want to. They're confidential. Nobody else finds out what we've discussed. So if you want to have a chat about your career options, then just get in touch. You email me and I will send you a list of my dates, and then we can book you in. I am very busy because a lot of people want to go through specialty stuff before the application deadline. So if it is F3 stuff, my diary's going to be open for the rest of the year. It's not going to close. You can hold off a bit and then contact me if you want to discuss F3s when they are starting to come out from January. But it's fine. Just get in touch and I'll book you in. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to this session. There will be another session which I'm going to record on interview prep, which will be available on the Found Your Place app and probably will be sent out through med-ed departments as well. And like I say, any questions on anything I've gone through, get in touch. But good luck with your applications. Thanks, bye.